Whenever we find ourselves struggling to solve a problem, we need to understand that the reason why we're struggling to solve the problem is because we don't understand the problem well enough. It's not because we don't have the answers or we don't have the solution. When you go looking for answers and solutions before you understand the problem well enough, all you're going to find is a coping mechanism. And that's an important differentiation, because a lot of the time we think we are going out in search of trying to make things better. And we do for the most part, but we don't realize that it's not sustainably better. We don't make things better in the long run, we make it better in the short run. And that's the problem, is that most people approach life from a perspective of how to fix here and now. That's it. If we have a problem with someone now, we deal with only what is the symptom of that problem, the problematic behavior, the disagreement, the disconnect, whatever it is. But we never ever look beyond that to see how did we arrive at that point. And that's why eventually we just keep finding symptoms of the same problem coming up, and we don't realize it's symptoms of the same problem. So we eventually convince ourselves that now we're just not compatible. We maybe have grown apart, or we just don't get each other. If you're not getting each other, then chances are you're also not getting yourself either. Because your ability to express what it is that you need from your partner is a key component of them understanding how it is that they need to show up for you, or how it is that you're experiencing them in the way that they show up for you. And then when we get to this point, a lot of people say, well, yeah, you need to improve how you communicate. And then they look for communication tools, and then they talk about how if you're speaking to your husband, you must approach him in this way and describe things in this way, and wait for this time when you speak to him, and vice versa. If you want to try and get through to your wife, you must understand what it is that she's thinking and how she sees it. And hey, it's exhausting, because it's not about communication tools. Show me someone who struggles to communicate about something that they are passionately competent in. They don't. The only time we struggle to communicate is when we have no reason to believe that we're either going to be understood, so then we hesitate and overcompensate and overthink how it is that we need to be sure that we understood. Or if we ourselves are not certain about what it is that is affecting us, or what it is that we need from someone else. We just feel it. We feel like we're being neglected. We feel taken for granted, or whatever it is, but we don't know why. So we can't tell them what it is that they're doing specifically that gives us reason to question our worth to them. And instead, we focus on how it is that they make us feel. And then they focus on how we make them feel. And then everyone's talking about how each other makes each other feel, and they promise to do better and all of that, and it doesn't get better. Because I've told you so many times I don't like it, and yet you keep doing it, and vice versa. And that's why it's so tedious to go through these processes if you focus on it from a method perspective. If you focus on giving people exercises and tools on how it is that they must improve their relationships. No, you improve your relationship by understanding yourself better, because it's through understanding yourself better that you are able to more accurately and more meaningfully interpret someone else's experiences or behaviors, or where they're coming from, or why it is that they might be expressing themselves a certain way. Because then you'll have awareness, you'll have self-awareness, you'll have mindfulness about the fact that, okay, well, I can see this and that looks familiar, because I know when I experience something, I also went through that, and I express myself in the same way. And then you can resonate, you have empathy. Because that's where empathy comes from. It comes from our lived experiences that we can then relate to someone else going through a similar experience, or whatever they're going through. We can see the resonance, we can see the commonality between the themes of what they're experiencing and what we experienced. And that's where the secret of good relationships come from, is about being curious about each other. About being curious about understanding why someone might perceive something differently to what you're actually explaining it as. But you're not going to do that if you feel threatened, if you feel as if you have to defend yourself all the time. And that feeling of needing to defend yourself is not because of what your partner's doing. It's because of your insecurity. Because the more insecure we are, the more we're going to perceive an attack, the more we're going to imagine that they are attacking us. And then we're going to interpret that as antagonistic, as insensitive, as all of those things. The things that convince us that we're not important enough. And the response to that is to demand significance, to fight, to accuse, to lay blame, to deflect accountability for how we feel. And then someone comes along and they tell you, well, yeah, you're suffering from depression, you're suffering from anxiety, you're suffering from childhood trauma. And that's the other thing. Every single thing these days, the moment you have any differences of opinion, relationship, and the difference of opinion becomes almost like a flashpoint in your relationship where it always escalates arguments and debates and things like that. Automatically, the go-to is childhood trauma. Everything that we experience these days is a childhood trauma. Why is it that suddenly there's so much childhood trauma for everyone, in everything, about every aspect of life? Why is it that one person's trauma is another person's growth experience? Because it's what we take from it. It's what we choose to be defined by. It's how we believe that defines our place in this world and what we can expect from life. That's what determines whether we see it as trauma or we see it as growth or we see it as just a bad experience that we needed to learn from, whatever it was. But because we are so fixated on protecting ourselves from the toxic behavior of the people around us, we interpret everything in the nth degree. We interpret everything within the context of how it's intended to harm us, how it's intended to get the better of us or take advantage of us. How did we get to this point? And it's not because the current generation suddenly understands human behavior better than the past few thousand years of humans experiencing life. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got everything to do with the fact that we are now so hyper-individualistic about what we need from relationships that we don't even know why we're getting married anymore. We don't even know why it is that we get into a relationship anymore. And everyone thinks that you get into a relationship because you share common interests or you have common goals or you get along. That's so lame. It's so shallow. It's so self-serving. What are you building in your relationship? What is this life about? What is the point of life if you're going to go through it looking for everything that gels, everything that eases you into that space? Where's the passion? Where's the excitement? Where's the enthusiasm, the curiosity, the inquisitiveness? Where is all of that gone to? We've got so many people that are stuck in the rut of life, blaming everyone else for why it is that they're stuck in their rut. What happened to accountability? What happened to self-respect and honor and dignity and what we hold ourselves to? Not what we hold ourselves to because we're not going to allow someone else to do something to us, but because we hold ourselves to a certain standard. And that's what we've lost. We've lost that sense of self. And our sense of self has now become defined by what it is that others have done. And it's a difficult discussion to have with most people because they're so emotionally charged about it. Because we've got this mainstream narrative that convinces you that if you've had a traumatic experience, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. We all have had, within the context of our lives, a traumatic experience. Some more than others, but nonetheless, it's relative to the context of our lives. You know, it's like that old adage that I've mentioned before about how it is that a baby at the time of birth, it is believed that they cry because relative to the lifespan that they've experienced, that's the most traumatic experience of their life. Now look at that within context. And then see how it is that we impose our realities on others when we define what they should see as traumatic or not, what they should see as toxic or not. And that's where the craziness comes in. Because we think we are doing ourselves favors by labeling everything these days, by having a label for every behavior, for every personality type, for every life experience, whether it's a positive label or a negative label, and then we define this baseline that we think that this is what a healthy life looks like. It doesn't. A healthy life for someone living in a rural area looks very different to a healthy life for someone living in a city. When are we going to get this? When did we become convinced that there's a normalization of how life should be experienced and that is the only universal truth? we've lost the plot in a big way. And we've lost it to such an extent that it's actually destroying the fundamental nature of relationships and the fundamental purpose of family units and communal structures. And everyone will tell you we're social beings by design. We can't exist in isolation and find contentment in that. We'll find maybe some solace and some peace in some form, but there's no contentment in isolation. So if we're going to hope to have some level of fulfillment, some level of worthiness about the belief that we actually add value to the lives of others, we can't keep positioning ourselves and interpreting our space in their space. We can't keep looking at that within the context of what we need and what it is that we think they think of us, or the labels that we then do, and then the neurodivergent this and the autistic that. And everyone wants to subscribe to a label if they struggle to self-regulate, because it gives them hope. It gives them hope that, okay, it's not me, there's something wrong with me, so that's why you have to make excuses for me, and now I need to find my clan where we all struggle with the same things and we reassure each other that, hey, this is something that is not our fault. So we get each other and we're going to start supporting each other. When you surround yourself with like-minded people, you make sure that you remain entrenched in that like-mindedness. That's it. You'll grow according to the average rate of growth of the herd that you're part of. You're not going to reach your own potential. You're not going to understand yourself any better because you're constantly looking at yourself through a lens that is defined by the people around you. So who you surround yourself with is going to be a reflection of what you think of yourself. Think about that. Who you surround yourself with is a reflection of what you think of yourself. And that right there, that's what reveals your self-esteem, your self-worth, your sense of self. Most people don't look at it that way. Most people look at their self-esteem being low or something, and they look for someone to blame for who destroyed their self-esteem. And here's the thing. Up until a point, and that point being very early in life, in your teen years already, where you might have not had enough agency, sense of self, awareness, opportunity for mindfulness, opportunity for critical thinking, where you didn't have those faculties developed. And don't tell me about brain development and all of that. There's absolutely no science behind it. There's assumptions, there's people that have derived conclusions out of it, but there's no causality that's been actually indicated in that. There's only just purely philosophy around it. And philosophy is open to review, because it very much is relative to the understanding and the grasp of the individual who is presenting that philosophy about how life works. So the point is that if we're going to look at ourselves through that lens, we're not going to realize that our self-esteem is developed through what we assume to be true from our earliest days of becoming self-aware. We're going to keep blaming others for it. And the reason why there's very real lived experiences, quality anecdotal evidence if you want to, but there's so many millions that have experienced it that you can't dismiss the anecdotal evidence. And I'm talking millions and millions and probably billions over the eons, is that what you choose to take from your environment is infinitely more important than what your environment gives you. That's why you get people who grow up in cases where the parents, one or both, are violent, are abusive, engage in substance abuse and other reckless and very destructive behaviors around the children. But the children themselves would choose to be better than that, would choose not to have that lifestyle for themselves because they've experienced the harm and the stress and the duress and everything else that goes along with living in that way. So they want better for themselves, and that's why they then distance themselves from that. And then you get others who grow up in that space, and because it's all they know, that it's too daunting for them to try to be different from that because they think they're going to fail at it. So they then succumb to it and they think, well, you don't know how bad I've had it. This is what my life was like, and that's why you shouldn't judge me. And then they keep themselves in that space, but it's a choice they make. And until we're willing to accept accountability for those choices, and this is a tough one for most people, I don't understand why, but it is a tough one for most people, is that we avoid taking accountability for the choices we've made in life, for how we've chosen to see ourselves, how we've chosen to make ourselves available to new opportunities, what it is that we prioritized. We're all figuring life out, all of us, every single one of us. Even the ones that appear to have it really down and solid, they also are figuring things out as they go along. And the difference is that if you are raised with a healthy self-esteem, you've got a significant jump ahead of most of the others. But that jump you have ahead of most of the others, that boost, that advantage you've got, is not on life itself. It's on the fact that you can focus more on the technical side of things that you want to achieve, things that you are pursuing. Because you don't enter into a space of technical curiosity, so to speak, like a profession or career or studies or whatever it is. You don't enter into that space questioning whether you're worthy of being there, whether you're going to make yourself look like an idiot for asking the wrong question or anything, because your self-esteem is intact. And if your self-esteem is intact, you don't have that playing in the back of your mind. So you have less distractions and you have to try less hard to achieve the same thing. Whereas if your self-esteem is intact, you just go straight in and you focus on what is the issue at hand, what is the problem you're trying to solve, what's the knowledge you're trying to acquire, and you don't mind making mistakes because your mistakes don't define you. Now that self-esteem, you might have inherited part of it as part of your upbringing, from your parents, from whoever was the most defining, influential characters in your life. But once you have agency, once you have the opportunity to claim privileges, adult privileges and other privileges in life about choosing who you want to associate with, where you want to go, what pursuits you want to explore in your life and all of that. The moment you have that ability to choose for yourself, you lose the right to blame your upbringing for how you continue to feel about yourself. And this is a tough one for a lot of people. Like I said, accountability for the choices we make, that seems to trigger a lot of people because we're so fixated on needing to see that the people who might have done wrong by us must first be brought to justice before we allow ourselves to move forward. That we keep ourselves in that holding pattern while we're waiting to see that justice happen because we're afraid that if we let it go, then they get away with it. So here's the thing. That's not a right or a wrong thing to do. Just understand the consequences of it. Understand what it is that you're getting yourself into when you do that. You're literally taking your life, your time, your energy, your opportunities that you have to be able to have a meaningful, fulfilling life, and you're putting that on hold because you want to be sure that someone doesn't get away with something that is out of your control to actually bring to bear on them. That's the important part. If it's out of your control, what's the point in holding on to it? What value does it give you to hold on to it? That bitterness, the anger, the underlying frustration and irritability and everything else. What does that give you? Besides the hope that if you hold on to it long enough, you'll live long enough to see that other person get a piece of their own. What if you're wrong about what they did to you? What if you were just misinterpreting their intentions towards you? And this happens a lot. And before you attack me for being insensitive or victim blaming and all of that usual things that comes out of these kinds of conversations, just hear me out. How many times haven't we gone through some or other experience in life where we thought someone was really nasty towards us or was really malicious towards us, and later on we look back and we realize that either they had their own demons they were struggling with, so that's why they vented in a space that they didn't realize was affecting us, or we realized that they were pushing us because they saw potential in us that we didn't see in ourselves. But we saw that them pushing us as a negative. We thought we were never good enough for them. They were never satisfied with us. They always wanted more from us. They were always demanding extra. There was never ever good enough for them. That's the perceptions that we have. That's the choices we make of how we choose to interpret and what we choose to take from someone else's efforts towards us. And we're accountable for that. Whether we're right or wrong is beside the point. It's about the accountability for realizing what the consequences are of the choices you're making. And that accountability, I come across very few people who are willing to accept it. Too many people who are having difficulty in their life, who are struggling with long-standing issues of conflict or contention or duress or depression or anxiety, It's because they're not willing to make the tough decisions. And those tough decisions are not because they know what decision they need to make, so that's why they have to they need to make it. It's that they're not willing to make the decisions about what to let go of, what is not worth their time anymore, what is out of their control. So they fixate on everything that is currently true about the duress they're experiencing, and they don't create any opportunity to look at opportunities that they can explore to move forward. And that's the thing about letting go. You don't focus on what you want to let go of, because then you're focusing on what you need to let go of. I don't know, it sounds very obvious to me, but for some reason it doesn't seem to be very obvious to most people. I don't know why. Help me to understand this, because I'm trying to make sense out of life itself in these conversations that I have, which are pretty much monologues that I have with myself, and I just share it with anyone that's willing to watch it. But the truth is, if we don't realize what it is that we're signing up for, is it fair to blame others for the consequences of that ill-informed or uninformed decision we've made? Is it fair for us to keep blaming people that crossed our paths a long time ago in life, when they had their own demons and they made peace with their demons and they moved on, and we sat there feeling betrayed because, like, look at them, they're having such a good life now after they messed up my life? Did they really set out with a deliberate, malicious, conscious intention to mess your life up and then move on? Or was it just a consequence of two individuals whose paths crossed at a time when they both didn't realize what impact they had on each other? And that's usually the biggest problem. But unfortunately, these days, that kind of a problem is reduced to, you're toxic, they're abusive, they're narcissistic. How does that help anything? Forget about whether those labels are even true or valid or not. How does it help you solve that problem? So here's the thing, right? I had a conversation with someone the other day that was talking about how it is that there was a certain individual in their life who was really toxic. And I said, why toxic? You're saying they're toxic. What does it give you to work with? If someone is toxic, then what? Do you have some sort of antidote to make them less toxic, to make them healthy, to make them beneficial, make them nutritional? I don't know if that's the opposite of toxic. But here's the more important thing. What is it that you're experiencing with them that gives you reason to summarize that entirety of their being as being toxic? Are they hurtful? Are they offensive? Are they abrasive? Are they neglectful? Are they oblivious to what it is that you need from them or what impact they have on you? Are they frustrating? Do you feel frustrated with the way they conduct themselves, or how it is that they have certain mannerisms? What is it about them that makes you feel like they're toxic? Because if you can't answer that question, you have no chance in the world of solving that problem. Not only do you not have a chance of solving the problem relative to what it is you need to be more aware of the next time you encounter someone that has the same impact on you, but you also have no chance of solving the problem with them because you can't tell them anything more than you're toxic. So if someone comes along and tells me I'm toxic, okay, so now what? Does that mean you have to have a hazmat suit whenever you're around me because I'm toxic? Come on. When are we going to get more real about these things? When are we going to stop being so intellectually lazy, so opportunistic in how it is that we want to frame people in our life, because it just makes it seem as if we're the innocent party, we're the aggrieved party, we're the ones that are offended, and they are the demons. And here's the thing. People who are in a victim headspace, people hate it when I say this. When I just mention victim mindset, everyone gets their backs up. But here's the truth of it. If you are in a victim headspace, you are going to interpret everyone's behavior around you in a negative way. And you're going to look for overt evidence, like clear, deliberate evidence of who's being kind to you. And anyone that's not deliberately being kind to you, there's something negative about them. Anyone who's not agreeing with you, who's not creating space for you in the way that you need them to create space because you communicated what space you needed and all of that sort of thing. Anyone that doesn't fit that, doesn't respond in that way, they then become toxic for you. They become problematic. They become abusive. They become selfish, narcissistic, and all sorts of things. Because you're in a victim headspace. So suddenly you project what it is that you need to protect yourself from, and you look at everyone within the context of whether or not they're a threat. Not what's good about them, not what's good about your relationship with them, not what opportunities you have with them to be able to build something great or explore something amazing, but whether or not they are making you feel safe. And that's the other thing, because that's what we arrive at then. Then everyone else around us is suddenly responsible for making us feel safe. How is that even possible? So let's assume that plays out. And I've got a partner who knows that I need a certain kind of assurance and a certain kind of balance and harmony around me so that I can feel safe, right? So they are then required to comply with that, because that is how I expect them to prove that they care for me and that they love me and all of those good things. And if you think that's a healthy model, that that's what a good relationship looks like, then my question to you is simple. What about what they need from you? So while you need to feel safe, how much are you capable of offering in return to make them feel safe, if they need to feel safe in the first place? We lose sight of that. We lose sight of the fact that when we're in a victim headspace, we are so demanding and so fixated on what we need from others that we lose sight of the impact that we have on them when we need that from them. That's the thing. In the moment of us needing it from them, we don't realize what it is that they might need, that they have to now suppress and subdue and switch off and shut down, because if they have to ask for that, it's going to cause a problem. So they have to consistently put their own needs on the back burner because they need to show up for us, because they're trying to maintain the harmony there. They're trying to maintain some sort of goodness, and they have to keep proving that they love us, because that's the way we perceive love, and vice versa. They need to feel respected in a certain way, and then we're not willing to do what they need to feel respected because we think that they are imposing on us. That's what a victim headspace does. It causes destruction left, right, and center. And the people with the loudest voices are the ones who feel most aggrieved. And if you feel aggrieved and you're climbing on that soapbox to tell the world about how it is that no one should be allowed to treat others in this way, because that's you projecting your struggle on life and everyone else's reality, that's where you get the clamoring of the tribes, of the herds. I'm neurodivergent, you're neurodivergent, let's bond. I've got childhood trauma, you got childhood trauma, hey, we're a safe space for each other because we know what it's like. What's the best outcome you can hope for in that? The best outcome, I think, is that everyone who huddles together like that, they find safety and they find comfort in familiarity. That's it. And then because of that, because of the absence of not feeling seen and heard and understood, of not feeling that, because they now feel like they are around people who get them, they assume that that's what peace and that's what a fulfilling life looks like. This is what emotional growth and all of that looks like. It isn't. It's avoiding reality. Because you're not facing what it is that gives you reason to feel the way you do. Accountability for how you feel about things is the most liberating experience of your life. Always, every day. Because you don't become defined by what other people say or do. But you hold yourself accountable for treating them the way you would want to be treated. You can't do that if you're in a victim headspace. You'll never be able to truly understand and be sensitized to the impact that you have on the people around you if you're constantly fixated on the impact that they're having on you. We all impact each other. That's what life is about. And if we're impacting each other in a way that we didn't intend to, that's where we need meaningful feedback about it, so that we can actually do something about it, or we can clarify what we intended versus what is assumed, etc. And that's how you develop understanding and bonds of trust and familiarity and friendship and all of those wonderful things. But if I'm having an impact on you that you don't appreciate, and the only thing you can tell me is I'm toxic, what am I supposed to do with that? What is anyone supposed to do with that label? Now you go and tell your parents they're toxic. What are they supposed to do with it? The only thing they can do is look at it and think, well, oh, okay, so raised you, took care of you, changed your nappies, washed your bum, did all of those things, sacrificed my own personal enrichment because I spent of my earnings and income and my available resources to ensure that you were provided for. Might not have been ideal, might not be. I might have fallen short in all sorts of ways, but yet, after all of that, the sum total of your takeaway from all of my efforts towards you is you're toxic. And the same thing is true also for partners. So I'm not just, because I'm a parent or something, like trying to fight on behalf of parents. I'm not. This is not about that at all. It's about getting us to realize that when we write people off, very important people to us will be hurt in ways that we never intended or we didn't even realize we were doing, because we work with the assumption that they're so toxic, we have no impact on them. That's the victim mindset. The best thing you can do for yourself in your relationship is to start noticing what impact you have on the people around you, not what you need from them, not what you're doing for them, what impact you have. When you show up, when you step into the room, when you respond and they asking you something, or when they share something with you, how present you are, or when they need something from you, how willing you are to respond, or how you look when you do respond, or if you respond at all. That impact you have, just your presence in their life, in the role that you occupy in their life. You don't have to say a word, you just have to be breathing in that role. And you have impact. But most people don't realize that. Most people don't look at that. Most people are so focused on how it is that things are not going the way they would like it to go because they've been singing the same song for so many years and no one seems to care, no one seems to listen, that they lose sight of exactly what it is that they do have as impact and what it is that they do share with the people around them. And this is not in any way condoning bad behavior. This is a major step towards realizing what the true reasons are for the bad behavior so that your response to it can be effective at least arresting the behavior, subduing it or disarming it, or improving it because you actually can see and hear where the other person is coming from, and then you can engage more meaningfully so that you can reach a meeting of the minds about it, or you can make them aware of how it is that they're affecting you or impacting on you, or what they're losing sight of that's so amazing and important between you. And you can't do any of that if you write them off as toxic. Stop writing people off. Challenge behaviors. Challenge mannerisms that are problematic. But challenge it meaningfully. Not just, I think it's wrong, so you must stop. Let them know what about it is problematic. And in that way, you also need to understand within yourself what is problematic about it. It can't just be a preference. Because then again, we're looking for uniformity, and uniformity is not love. Uniformity is not affection, it's not endearment, it's not care, it's not concern. Uniformity is compliance, it's a contract, it's a transaction. It's an agreement that we will do this so that we can avoid issues. There's no fulfillment in that. Life is amazing when you've got varied experiences that you guys can create together. When you've got new experiences that you can explore together. And it's about showing mutual curiosity about each other and mutual respect for each other and mutual sensitivity and concern about each other's experiences. And when you have that as your disposition, then you stand a chance of living a fulfilling life. Then you stand a chance of living a life that goes beyond the transaction, beyond the marriage contract. But most people get married because they want each other to be in a certain state when they get married so that they know that, okay, this can work. Sometimes in the traditional approaches, the woman is looking for the man to be financially established and stable. So then he's ready for marriage. And the man is looking for the woman to have a wits about her and be composed and have a certain demeanor and level of modesty or whatever it is that they need from her. And they look at that and think, okay, that's good. That's where I think you're also ready for marriage. You know how to cook, you know how to take care of kids, whatever it is. If both people in the relationship are supposed to be ready-made and then only they bond, what's the point of the relationship? Where's the opportunity for growth? Where's the opportunity to experience a life that's uniquely the combination of the two of you, and in the process you develop your combined sense of what works, what doesn't work, how good it is, what's worth struggling for, how you're building each other up, how you're supporting each other, what impact you have on each other, how you want to impact each other. Where's all of that going to come from? Because the moment you need each other to be a specific kind of capability before you get married, then that's where the expectations start. And then the moment the other person falls short of your expectation because their interpretation of what you saw as ready for marriage was different from theirs, and you now raise an expectation of them after marriage that they weren't prepared for or they didn't think was an issue, suddenly what was trust feels like betrayal, feels like abandonment, like rejection, like criticism, like judgment, because suddenly what they thought they were enough for, they're suddenly inadequate for. And all of that is because we've lost sight of what's important. And what's important is about creating experiences with each other, being committed to wanting to create something good out of the union of your relationship. Not how it is that you're going to serve me and I can serve you in the relationship. That's shallow. And that will wear out so quickly. And then eventually you start having wandering eyes and a wandering heart, and you think, oh, we outgrew each other because things are so boring. Like, it's the same thing every day, every week, every weekend. Every time we go on holiday, it's the same thing. Every time we have to visit family, it's the same thing. If your life is boring, it's because you're boring. It's really as simple as that. We need to be accountable for the choices we make. If we're not willing to be accountable for the choices we make, then we're placing a burden on others that they didn't sign up for. No one signs up for that. No one signs up to feel responsible for how we feel about life. That's on us. And please, if you have a problem with someone, give them something meaningful to work with. What is it about the way they're conducting themselves that you have a problem with? Not, you're not supposed to do that, you must do it this way. That's not good enough. That's just forcing compliance to a standard that you might even disagree on. It's about what is problematic about the way you're approaching something. What is problematic about the way you address me or the way you show up for me? What is it that I don't like because it means this to me, or this is how I perceive it, or this is what it demands of me that I don't think is fair? Give yourself something tangible, something meaningful to work with. Not you're toxic. Come on. Life becomes more interesting when you're not intellectually lazy. I promise you. It becomes more fulfilling as well. So if you're going through life and you reach a point in your life where you're convinced that you have it all figured out and the way you know it to be is the way it is, and anyone who disagrees with you, they just don't get it, you stop growing. And when you stop growing, that's when you age. That's when you become old in spirit. That's when you lose the child at heart. That's when you lose your curiosity about life. You lose your enthusiasm for the next day. And that's when chronic illnesses start setting in, because you're not looking forward to anything. So slowly but surely your faculties, your bodily functions will start shutting down because you don't need it anymore. There's no need for growth. There's no need for excitement, for enthusiasm, for optimism. It's just a daily grind, and that's it. And I guarantee you, if you look at the people around you, if you look at yourself, you'll find that your health suffers most when what you're doing doesn't excite you. Be accountable for the choices you make, and give the people around you something meaningful, tangible to work with if you have a problem with them. Don't just write people off. Challenge behaviors, challenge mannerisms, challenge principles and value systems. Challenge something meaningful, something that makes a difference. Don't just write people off and say, it's your problem to solve, I'm done. Because then you were never invested in the first place, and that's selfish. And if you're selfish in that way, you shouldn't be getting into a relationship, because you're just going to mess someone else's life up. Probably some hard truths or some offensive truths, or even just offensive points, because some people might not think that they're truths, might disagree with me completely. But as always, if you disagree with me, challenge the merit of what I'm saying. Don't take a dig at me personally or dig at my credentials or anything of that sort. If I'm putting forward a statement about the human experience and you disagree with it, tell me what about it you disagree with. Not just because someone else said so. And that's the intellectual laziness, where we go and we follow blindly people that have credentials, and we think that just because they have credentials, we must that is the truth, that is coming from an authoritative source. But we have no critical thinking to actually determine whether that authoritative source actually makes sense. Authoritative sources have been advertising at some point the benefits of smoking for asthmatic people. Authoritative sources believed that serotonin was linked to depression, which, by the way, was debunked in 1979 already. Do the research. Authoritative sources were bribed to make us believe that butter was the problem and sugar was healthy for you. They were bribed. There's evidence for it available from authoritative sources, from credible sources. So be careful what you trust just because someone has credentials. You need to develop your critical thinking skills so that you can be more deliberate and more purposeful about how you live your life, not following blindly because someone said so. And for the last time, please go beyond just writing people off as toxic or abusive. Those are perceptions. Those are not tangible things that someone can work with to determine why it is that you have a problem with them. Take care.